because Johnny's great at that. How are you, Jim?
I am very good. Very nice to meet you, Eric.
Very nice to meet you too. I have a sense you are my kind of guy, my kind of author. I am a self-described techno-utopian nut job, and so I'm excited to
Yeah.
meet a. Seems like we got some of the same stripes.
Yeah, Geek is our middle name, I guess.
So I know you've been writing a lot of books over a long period of time. Do you want to kind of give me an overview of your career as an author?
It's interesting. My first book was about artificial intelligence, and I had since childhood, literally, I've been fascinated in the concept of intelligent robots. And it might have been as a kid I watched, cartoons like Astro Boy and stuff, which was a robot cartoon, Japanese. A lot of fun as a kid.
Yeah.
But as I evolved in my career, I kept on thinking about the concepts that you would have to deal with. So my first book was about artificial intelligence. It's called Sensitive by Nature: Understanding Intelligence and the Mind, and it took a tremendous amount of research. You have a topic that you love, and then you say, "I'm ready to write a book," and you realize, "Damn, I'm not ready to write anything." It requires like a lot of knowledge to explain all these concepts to other people. So it took 10 years of research to put that book together. And the result was actually really good. I was really surprised with it. I had introduced some concepts in there like paradigm shifts, and actually brought my intent was to bring the reader through a paradigm shift that they would actually feel. So
Yeah.
as they made the shift, they would wow, this I just shifted from one reality to another. Um, and so, that was a fun book. I wrote that 7 times to get it right.
Whoa.
Uh, just an incredible amount of effort. The second book was sort of boring because it's really about what I do for a living. It's an enterprise architect. So I wrote about enterprise architecture and the different
Mm.
types of frameworks and patterns and uh, reference architectures that you use and techniques to help make that job easier to understand how IT is supposed to help the business instead of like, sort of like the business is not there to fund IT. It's IT is there to actually help the business make itself more profitable and expand. And then the third book, which is the one that you're aware of, is artificial consciousness. Now, there's a big leap from artificial intelligence to artificial consciousness. Um, so I call it a journey beyond AI. And in here, what I found in the research, because remember, I've been through this whole research thing before, right? So now I'm ready. I roll up my sleeves, I roll up my pant legs. I am super ready. So here I am. I have all of these different um, sources. So I have sources that allow me to see professors in different universities with different backgrounds
Mm.
explain what consciousness is. And I am like, this is amazing. No one agrees with what consciousness even is.
Yeah.
They can't even agree with what it isn't. So it's amazing. So the whole, most of the entire effort was just to define what consciousness was. And so I did it through identifying layers or levels of consciousness. And I was shocked to find out that eukaryotic cells, even paramecium, exhibit signs of where they learn, and they're aware of their environment. And based upon their learning, they'll actually do things better the second time, the third time, and the fourth time. And unlike, say, what professors call the intelligent thermostat, um, where a thermostat can't ever do anything other than what it was programmed to do. It just does the same thing over and over again. Paramecium, though, given the same circumstances, has the ability to choose otherwise. So here's a key component of what consciousness represents. It's not some mechanical thing that you can, create in a program that simply says, here's my inputs. This is what I should do given the situation, and I'll do it. It's also that ability to say, well, I've tried that before, it didn't work, or bad stuff happened, or I just don't want to do that. It's so now you have this whole realm going up through the 24 levels of this, with additional capabilities, which I try to introduce in the book very simply. And then I take people on a journey through what you do with this information. And eventually I get to the point where I say, you can take these concepts and you can actually develop automation to do these things. You can create all of the different components that support consciousness. And so I give a glimpse into how current day technology, including the AI ML stuff, which I've been working with since the 80s, but now you have LLMs and all this great new algorithms that are available, where we actually program ourselves, and that's an important piece based upon what we read, who we talk to, what movies we watch. We're actually programming ourselves, and if we meditate, we're even taking more control over our own programming. And so here's something where I had to tackle: how does a computer program itself? And given this new LLM technology, it solved the problem for me. It was great. So I explained that in the book, and then I explained where we go. And now I'm working on my fourth book,
Hmm.
which is artificial omnipotence. So you say, wow, we go from artificial intelligence to artificial consciousness to freaking artificial omnipotence. What the heck is that? Jim, tell me what that is. So what you have there is that when you look at the trend, and this is going to continue, you see it in medicine, you see it in law, you see it in all of these different technical disciplines. But if a computer can tell you, say, diagnose somebody's symptoms better than a doctor can, or if a computer can tell you what legal precedents exist faster and more accurately, better than a team of attorneys can, then all of a sudden you're really delegating your thought processes and your research and your thinking over to a computer. And you're now taking it more and more as your source of truth. Now, to a large extent, it's really important that you have valid input. Like the
Hmm.
reason I'll use, say, Copilot very heavily is because I know that Microsoft put all of its documentation into that model. Because it has good, solid information. Microsoft does really good documentation. All of the documents are great. So you have all this stuff about how their products work, what their problems are, how to fix it. So when you ask Copilot anything about a Microsoft product, damn, it knows the answer. It's there. But if you put garbage into it, like if you
Hmm.
started to, and Microsoft was careful not to just take things from the internet, but you put crazy speak into an
Yeah.
LLM, you're going to get crazy back. And, it's just like, if people expose themselves to crazy, they're going to start sounding crazy, much like me.
So when did you publish that first book, Sensitive by Nature?
Oh, gee, that's like 20 years ago now.
Wow. How has the last couple decades, how have
You
you
know,
done as a predictor of what was to come?
it's interesting because when you look at the definition of AI and ML, a lot of it is based on really what neural nets can do. But it's taking some function that people do, and being able to do that with a machine. So one of the early
Yeah.
ones was being able to recognize patterns, visual patterns. Strangely enough, computers were very bad at that. And then the first really good neural
Yeah.
net came out, and American Express knocked it out of the park. They took applications for credit cards, and they said, "Here's here's a stack of applications that represented our good credit risks. Here's a stack of the bad credit risks, learn this computer, and then I'm going to show you a new one and tell me which one it belongs to. And it did it better than large staffs of people did. And so it did it faster, more accurately, and they were able to process so many applications. Like they just couldn't get enough applications, and
Yeah.
weed out the bad ones. So it really helped the explosion and the growth of Amex. But then you started to see many other applications. You see them in government, you see them in defense, and you see them in business. You see them in research. Now it's advanced to the level that companies like NVIDIA are depending on these AIs, um, which design their chips. And the chip designs now is so complicated that people can't do them. They actually have to have the AIs do them. So, yeah, and they have specialized AIs. So I think the world is heading for a whole bunch of these little AIs that are very specialized to do these little functions to build more advanced equipment. And so we're really moving technology much faster than it's ever moved before. It's the acceleration is incredible. I mean, you hear the story
Yeah.
about how mail used to travel through, from wooden sailing ships.
Yeah, the reinforcing
Yeah,
acceleration of each new technology helps the next one come faster and become bigger and cheaper. Um,
yeah,
is Yeah, we're living through an incredible inflection point, which is very exciting.
yeah.
You seem to have seen it coming.
And you try to see where that's all going to go.
Yeah.
And if anything, we're yeah, in a sense, we're really a bunch of advanced monkeys on this ball going around the sun, which has a lifespan to it. That ball has a point in time it's going to be consumed by the sun. Um, and
Not if we
so
have anything to say about
we
it.
have right, but somewhere down the road, somebody's going to have to deal with that problem, much like our deficit. So, but although the deficit will probably happen much
Little
sooner.
different time scales, yeah.
Exactly. But you look at where AI is going, that you could actually have um, artificially conscious entities going out and exploring space and making
Mhm.
decisions and overcoming the disadvantages of plain AI, because AI
Mhm.
is actually not that smart. You look at uh, the technologies out there, you still need somebody who's conscious to drive these things.
Yeah, the
But
agency.
exactly, you get it. And that agency is so important. If you can create that, and it has some sort of objective in mind, and it can, really make decisions and overcome ways of thinking things and reprogram itself to be able to think about things differently than it had before, and come up with different paradigms. One of the great things in the book is I cover the whole notion of people seeing paradigms.
Hmm.
There are people who only see one paradigm at a time. There are some people who can see two paradigms at a time, and they make good negotiators, good attorneys. They can see both sides of the argument. And then there are people who see so many paradigms, it's damn confusing. Um, and you could have a computer actually deal in seeing multiple paradigms simultaneously and working across them. So it's quite interesting what's possible.
Yeah. How has how has having these books out sort of changed your life, to change the conversations that you're having? What's some of the feedback you've gotten about having written these and gotten them out?
Oh, that's a great question. I think there's so many levels with which you can uh, look at that question. I think the one that's most profound to me is that what it's done is it allows me to have conversations with people at a different level than I've ever had before because of the amount of thought that I've had to put into the process.
Hmm.
And that's probably the most valuable to me. Um, there are so many people who are really smart, and when you can engage them at a really meaningful level and be able to explain different concepts because really rigorously been through them, and have that meeting of the minds. It's very rewarding. I think that's actually the biggest benefit out of all of them.
Hmm.
Uh, but it helps also for people to be able to confirm how much of a nerd this guy really is.
I do always say, like, writing a book is building a lighthouse that tends to attract your kind of people. So I'm sure there's the journey of transformation that you go on as the author, and the learning process that you do as you do the research and find out what you believe and how much of it is true as you put the pen down. But there's also all the knock-on effects of having this lighthouse out there that's gathering your kind of nerds.
Yeah, that is so true, and I think there are so many aspects in people's lives where all they're really doing is looking for their people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at what's possible today with the internet and these different social media platforms, but it's really the conversation that you have, and that you're right, that it is a lighthouse for it. So if you're looking for like people who can see um, many paradigms, um, there's even in the book, I put a test for how to determine whether you fall into the category that you can do that. But to find people, because a lot of people don't realize, how they can look at this, like level one paradigm awareness, level two, level three, and when you explain this in terms and give it a taxonomy that they can understand, then they can have that conversation with other people and engage you back again as well, and that's nice, because a lot of people go through life feeling they see things and they can't realize why is say Fred, I'm just using Fred's actually a smart guy, but I'm just going to say why is such an idiot on this topic, and it has to do with Fred's paradigm.
Yeah.
um and if you have a different paradigm, than Fred, you're looking at it very differently. So if you can see many of those, and you say, well, okay, now I see where Fred's looking at. How do I get Fred from his paradigm to my paradigm? Now you got something to work on. You got something to work with.
Yeah, I like the kind of truism, like perspective is worth 30 IQ points.
Yes,
And I
it
there's
really,
more to a paradigm than a perspective, but there's overlap there.
excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah. Yeah, you could have the smartest people in the world, and just because they're the frame that they're looking at things through is so different.
Yeah.
Free will is another one of those. Some people who are neuroscientists look at free will from the perspective that people don't have free will, and I guess they had no choice other to come up with that conclusion.
They
Uh,
so badly want to study something else, but
it's just it's amazing the logical box that some people put themselves into. So one of the things
yeah.
I also explain about is how you know people create a frame for a topic, and then they force everything into that frame, and they want you to participate in that crazy frame, and really the frame is invalid. So you just have to expose the invalidity of the frame and say, right, well, wait a minute, the answer's outside that thing.
If the frame exists, the answer, or at least some portion of it, almost by definition, will exist outside of it,
Yeah,
and misery within it. So yeah,
very true.
it's a good instinct, I think, to just reject every frame you come across and try to continuously zoom out, seek new paradigms,
Yes,
which I feel like is what you're advocating here.
yeah. I'm definitely enjoying this conversation much more than I ever thought, by the way.
I
This is great.
I find I thrive on low expectations.
No.
Um, as somebody who's kind of, I mean, you've been decades of independent authoring and writing in all the formats, and your books are exhaustively researched. One of the things I always try to do is, or at least that I find, is that it's very difficult for new authors to uh, accept any form of advice other than what comes from a seasoned author. So I ask you to kind of, if there is any common questions or wisdom that you would bestow on an author earlier in their journey that is looking to follow in some of your footsteps? What would you share with them?
It's a very good perspective to take. I think one of the things that I think have been most helpful to me is when you read back what you've written. Um, Imagine that you're listening to it from a an author that or a performer that you really like to hear from.
Mm,
Like my favorite author is or reader. I look at, yeah, it's interesting how you look at the author and the performer as singular, but like they're not. But my favorite reader is of the Gray Man series, Jay Snyder, and Jay just has a wonderful style to his cadence and pronunciation and the way he performs the material. And you listen to it in that voice, and you have to see, well, is this what I can I improve upon this? Is this what I
mm,
want to have? And that helps you prepare for how other people are going to perceive it.
mm,
When you have it's I guess people who develop movies and these other things have to look at what is the audience experience on this thing, and you have to consider that audience. And to a large extent, it sounds crazy, but I am part of my own audience. I enjoy going back and reading or listening to, in this case, the audiobook that your company produced. It's I play a piece of it to friends, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is incredible!" Yeah, it's just great.
that's fantastic. I love that you so earnestly pursued your clear vision for this. And I do, yeah. Before we wrap up, I'm enjoying this immensely, and I wish we could have a very long conversation. But I know that you have had a wide variety of publishing experiences, across your career. And I know that we worked hard to deliver on your expectations and your vision on this, and just want to hear if everything lived up and if you had a great experience working with me and the team.
Oh, definitely. I think the initial company that had approached me to do the audiobook, it was that whole experience was very lengthy and a nightmare.
Mm.
Um, it was just something that I'd have to say that guys, girls out there, go out and find a reputable company like yours, because the experience was completely the opposite. The timelines were in your company were always met. The expectations were always met. Um, the quality was always there. Um, and I don't know. I guess I was talking to Jeff back and forth, and he could see that I was worried, but he had if he put myself into his shoes, he must be thinking, well, maybe I'm dealing with a bona fide lunatic on the other side here, and maybe Jim isn't happy with anything, you know. But I think he saw that I am actually very easygoing, and overall, I think he, far exceeded all of my expectations, and I love the output. The product is excellent.
The product is excellent. I'm glad to hear you had a good experience in producing it. And yeah, Jeff, our head of audiobooks, is a wonderful guy and a true expert. But it is very true that every author is, books are so personal. Like every author is nervous at many different points along the writing journey for many different reasons. And it's part of the craft, I think, of being a good publisher to recognize that and confront that and assuage those worries and just deliver on the expectations and timelines and promises and keep working until authors are happy with the final product. And I always say, if you're not proud to put it in front of somebody that you're like, somebody in your life who you look up to, who you're like maybe even a little intimidated by, then like we didn't meet the quality bar that you need. and we should keep working on it. So if you're showing it to friends and they're impressed and sounds like a professional, excellently executed audiobook, then we can rest easy.
Yeah, I think the difference was when I look at the metrics, the prior company actually, ended up quitting, and it was
Oh wow.
after it was well into past 1,000 errors.
Oh my
Um,
God.
Whereas I think the total number of revisions or corrections that you had to make were three minor things, and that was it. It's shocking that the
Wow.
amount of the amount of time I had to put into the other thing and the amount of time I had to put into working with you guys. It was like I was on vacation working with you guys. It was great.
That's awesome. It is a tough. This is a very tough industry in that there's no. It is very difficult to tell the professionals from the amateurs until it's too late. Until you're months and thousands of dollars in, and you're finding you're not happy with the work, and you're not getting any closer. And there's a lot of horror stories out there. I'm sorry you went through that, but I'm glad we ended in a good spot.
Yeah, especially for a book whose content is rather technical. The vocabulary that's involved in my book is definitely beyond a high school education. So there, it was just everything was dealt with, all of the complexities very nicely. Um, as compared to what it would be like to just do an audiobook for a children's book. It's
Yeah.
it's different.
Yeah, this is. I don't think I properly set the context, but these are borderline textbooks. I mean, this is 450 pages um, of like pretty advanced material. So
Yeah, and the different terms in biology, and even for touching upon the philosophy part of it, the Buddhist words that were used in the text. I was just floored that Jay was able to deal with all of the Sanskrit and everything. It was like, oh my God, this this guy is
uh,
amazing.
it's a professional. It's really incredible when you meet somebody that's like better than you ever conceived somebody could be at a thing. Even though you're aware talent exists, but there's a level of excellence that's just sometimes inconceivable until you get close to it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Jim, thank you so much for working with us, for trusting us with your book, for taking the time to talk to me, and for being willing to share your wisdom with other authors,
Yeah, and I'm definitely
present and
coming
future.
back again for my next book. I'm not letting anybody touch it but you guys. That's it.
Thank you. There's no finer testimonial than that, and I appreciate it very much. I would love to continue the conversation in a longer format. Actually, I have many open threads that I want to keep tugging on and have a deeper conversation about AI and consciousness and omnipotence, and these are things that I'm fascinated by personally. So I'm hoping we can do that.
That's why I conclude in the book, that the most important thing in life is having conversations like this with a glass of wine, maybe a little food to eat. But that's where the real enjoyment is, enjoying these concepts, because the thoughts that this leads to, that they're just thrilling, just absolutely thrilling.
Yeah, I'd love it. Let's see if we can find a slow dinner and a deep conversation.
Exactly.
All right. Appreciate you, Jim.
Eric, pleasure.